What is up, guys? It's John Fig, and this is Pace Around Your Grandpa's Yard and talk about the craziest shit that you've seen in the cannabis hour. So I have not been able to talk to many of my friends about this stuff. It's really just the core cannabis community, but I just wanted to talk about some of the top 3 stories that I had at SISU that were just absurd. And it was just things that happen, and it goes beyond cannabis. It's really just about entrepreneurship in general and what you should expect. Because entrepreneurship is super hard, and I love the Elon Musk quote, which basically says that entrepreneurship is like chewing glass and staring into the abyss, and he could not be more right. It is one of the hardest things you'll do in your life, and so I want to talk about it more. And so for those of you guys that don't know me, my name is John Figueredo. I started a company called SISU. We went from 0 to $100 million in annual recurring revenue within 3 years. We ultimately sold it for $100 million in a $1 billion transaction with Jay-Z as our chief visionary officer. And I'm really doing this right now because I want to share the lessons that I've learned along the way to help cut the learning curve for the next generation, because it's important to me. Time is the most important asset, and I want people's dreams to become a reality. And if they can learn anything, I wish I could say these things so I didn't make the same mistakes. I could talk to the 5-year-ago John, and that's what I want to do now. And so hopefully this stuff is helpful. If you guys find it valuable, leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe. Check out, I'm gonna have a ton more content coming. It costs you guys nothing, and it really helps me out just showing to other people, because the algorithm will show it to more people in the industry. So without further ado, let's get started. So first one first, and I'm gonna kind of go backwards through time on this, is the first one was the LA riots. So do you guys remember when COVID was hitting full steam and it was just kind of chaos? So there was the riots everywhere, San Francisco, LA, all of that stuff. So we had a showroom in downtown Los Angeles, and it was crazy. And so one of the things that happened is, when I started a company, it was like having a baby. It was like having a baby to where I checked my phone and I checked the security cams every 2 hours in every single one of the facilities, because my whole life was in it, right? All of the employees were there. All of my money was in it. It was everything to me. So I protected it like you would protect a child. And I woke up, I remember waking up at 2 a.m. one day, checking the camera, and I see this guy, and he was, just walking down the street. We had some sketchy people in like downtown Skid Row in LA, and he had this bottle with him, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. He must just be drinking. And then all of a sudden I see that there was a tiny rag coming out of the bottle, and he took out a lighter, lit it, and it was a Molotov cocktail, and he straight up threw it, lit the building on fire next to us. And so I freaked out. I instantly just freaked out, and I'm just like, I called our guys. So we had these security drivers, and they were incredible. Omni Security. They were ex-Navy SEALs, ex-Green Beret. And so I called Bill in the middle of the night, and I'm like, listen, it's game time. We need to take this stuff out. I had $5 million in cannabis product down there. I also had like a couple $1 million in cash. We do nothing like that now because we have all of the best banking systems, and so it's much better, but it was hell then. So in the middle of the night, they drove from Humboldt, picked up $5 million in cannabis product as all of these riots were happening. And then from there, you had, it was just wild. Picked up $5 million in product, picked up $2.5 million in cash. And then we basically took it all back in the middle of the night, and we closed down shop for a couple days. And it was a wild time, and that was like a pretty normal kind of week. Those are things that would just happen in this industry, and that happens because there's no Safe Banking Act, there's no anything like that, and it just makes it far more dangerous in the world. And so that was a really interesting one. And the other one that was really fun was, I was going through a process, right? And so here, give me 2 seconds. I just want to check the notes on this. The other one was VapeGate. I don't know if you guys remember VapeGate at all. So VapeGate was when people's lungs started getting hurt in like mid-late 2019. And so I get this phone call on a Tuesday, and this guy calls me. He's like, your business is done. And this is a good friend. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, let's do this. So you get this call, and he says, so their lungs are getting hurt. Newsom's thinking of shutting everything down. So what do we do? So the first thing that you have to kind of think through is, you're like, okay, what are the permutations of an existential threat? And it ended up not even being anything to do with our market, our recreational cannabis market. It had to do with the fact that people were using cutting agents with vitamin E acetate that were never meant to be inhaled in people's lungs. And it was causing major inflammation, and it killed a few people. It's really, really sad. And that's why we need a regulated market. And so in that moment, there's 2 options that are going to happen. So the first option is, number one, they ban vapes altogether. So you're fucked. Like, it's just game over, right? So that's game over. And I'm just like, okay, so we've got 500 cannabis farms that we work with, and we have the largest cannabis supply chain in California. So what we did is we were like, okay, we're going to start a flower showroom. This is in 2019, because we needed to tap into that network, because if vapes were gone, then we needed to use our network in order to stay in business. Well, they figured it out, because ultimately I knew it would come back. So that was number one. So we started that right away. We ultimately turned it into a $60 million revenue stream that took us from 40 million second year to about 101 million the third year. And so that was a pretty cool ancillary part of our business. The second thing that we went through is we're like, okay, they could ban botanical vapes. And so if they banned botanical vapes, then I knew that the next iteration of this product that was coming was going to be live resin. And so live resin is cannabis derived terpenes. For those of you that are not really, in the cannabis industry or anything, you've got kind of different types of terpenes that give them different flavors. You got like blueberry, which is not a natural cannabis flavor, and then you actually have cannabis flavors. So if they banned botanical vapes, then I was going to have to move on to door number two. So I bought a $30,000 machine that was going to allow us to get to the other side and create those terps, because I knew that what would happen is someone else would do cannabis-derived terpenes. They would say, hey, listen, you have to buy distillate, which is the base thing that we sold at SISU. And they'd say, you'd have to buy distillate from us and we'll sell you terpenes. And that would have locked us out. It would have ultimately killed our business. So it was a defensive play. So those are really the two hedges that we did in our business, and that was on a Tuesday. So that was another fun one. And then, last but not least is just like starting a business, right? Like everything that you could imagine that could go wrong will go wrong. That's just how business works. It's a part of the game. And so when we started, we got this machine, and it was so funny. It's like we bought this machine, and it was for evaporating ethanol off of the crude product. So without going into too much detail, we do fractional distillation. There was like 3 major sets, and I needed this middle set here. And so it evaporated ethanol from the crude when you go through the extraction process. And we bought this machine that we didn't realize had to be hooked up to a water line. And we made a hard pivot using this machine to where it was a one-way door. Once you went through that door, you could not convert back and use the other machines. So we were using this damn machine that used like 5 to 10 gallons of water. It used 5 to 10 gallons of water a minute. So the building that we had was not set up to pump that much water. A, it was going to cost like $10,000, $20,000 a month, which is insane. We couldn't afford that. And then B, you couldn't even do it because it was actually affecting its ability to get water to the sewage, so it shut down the whole building. So they made us turn off the machine, and it was just chaos. And so we were like, what do we do? And so Shannon, my co-founder, unbelievable, just problem solver, we hooked up our water line to a 5,000 gallon water tank that they actually just coincidentally had on the property, and we started cycling it. And we're like, brilliant, right? We got all this water, this is awesome. Problem number 2, all of a sudden we realized that it's heating up the water. So you've got this water that gets pumped in a tank, and this machine ran so hot it was increasing the temperature of the water. So then it didn't even work. The machine didn't work anymore. And we were calculating the temperature going up, and we were like, okay, the machine's going to be non-functional in 48 hours. So we had 48 hours to get a solution in order to cool this down. We all go to town. We try to figure out a bunch of different ways to do it. Shannon figures out that you've got these things called gator chillers. So there's these like gator kind of chiller pools. Basically what they do is in Arizona, if you guys know any people in Arizona, how they cool water in pools is they basically have this like kind of funneling system to where it drips through the top of this machine, that instead of having water be kind of like solid, like going through a hose, it breaks it down into water droplets, and it kind of blows air across it. And so if you just blow a little bit of air on a drop of water, it actually decreases in temperature really quickly. So that keeps your pool cool, it keeps like the temp down and stuff like that, and it's a really economical decision. So we got one of our employees, took Ryan, called him up, and we're like, hey, we need someone to drive down and get the thing right away. So he gets a one-way flight to Phoenix, Arizona, and then he goes there with his girlfriend, to Phoenix, Arizona, and then he picks up this damn thing. We get like a Toyota Sienna, and he drives it home, and we had the machine up and running in 40 hours. He flew there, he drove like 15, 20 hours back, and then from there, we got the machine up and running. And the reason why that matters is because There was a $50,000 opportunity cost every single day. Every single day, it was $50,000 that machine was not running, and that was not acceptable. I couldn't pay our bills. We had very little money at that point, and so that kept us going. And so that is an example of a game of inches. And that is one of probably hundreds of stories that happened at SISU. And real talk, this is what happens in business. The best companies are gonna find agile solutions to all of their problems. You hear crazy stories from like Tesla, where they bought like all of these little connectors from like Fry's Electronics, because they just did it because they needed to keep the thing running. So you've got these little hero moves that happen. Ultimately, you build infrastructure behind it, but you're gonna have a bunch of those kind of things when you're finding product market fit or when you're scaling your company, because shit happens. And so the reason why I tell these stories is because entrepreneurship is cool right now, right? Everyone's just like, oh, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, it's gonna be sick. But like, entrepreneurship is hell. It's just going back to the Elon Musk quote, it's like eating glass and staring into the abyss. And it's so difficult. There are moments, and for anyone that has gone through entrepreneurship, like I'm gonna tell you a feeling and you're gonna be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So you have a moment when a mistake happens, like a really bad one, or when some adverse effect happens, and you just think about it and you say, am I strong enough? I don't think I'm strong enough to handle this moment. You get this wave, this unbelievable amount of cortisol through your system, and you're like, I don't think I could do it. And then you realize in that moment that if you do not solve that problem, your baby will die and your dream will be over. And you just literally have to sack up and get it done. And you have so many days like that where you just want to curl up in a ball, but you have to get it done. And so everyone touts all this stuff on the media, whether it's like, Instagram sold for like whatever $1 billion after being open for like 9 to 12 months, and Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook and it blew up within a year. And those are anomalies. That's not how business normally works. You're normally 5 to 10 years in the game before something really big happens. The average entrepreneur is like 30 to 35 years old. They're not 25, but the media touts anomalies. And so for all of those people that are like, hey, I'm young and like I want to start a business, or even like if you're not young, it's just like experience matters. You want to read as many books as possible. You want to experience as many things, have as many mentors as you can, because when you start a race, you want to be battle ready. You want to be battle ready to roll. And it's like, this is going to sound stupid, I'm just going to say it. It's like, I'm like the guy that used to play like this video game called StarCraft. And for anyone who knows what that is, it's like an empire building game. And I was the guy that would like build up all the defense. And then when I would like go to fight, it would be much easier because I'd have like built up all the infrastructure. So I think I'm like kind of a preparation guy and like generally like a little bit more scared to jump in. But then I have other friends that are like, they just go for it and they just absolutely shoot over the top and are like, hey, I'm going to start this right away. And they get killed because you're not prepared. You're not prepared to play in that world. And so, don't feel bad if you're at a certain age and you haven't done X, Y, and Z. Don't feel anything towards that, because this is your journey. This is your time, and you're gonna know when you're ready. You're gonna have the right opportunity at the right time with the right skill set, and that's when it's gonna matter. So just like until then, just be reading the books, understanding as much as possible, gearing up, because if you're gonna go through this journey, you wanna be prepared for it. And so that's just my little story for the day about some fun stories that happen in cannabis, and hopefully you guys find it helpful. It obviously translates to so many different things in entrepreneurship, and those are just some tastes of what it's like in the day in the life. So thank you guys for listening. Your time and attention is incredibly valuable, and I want to make sure that I respect it. I hope that you guys get as much value as possible out of these things, and I really appreciate you. So, leave a like or a comment to help me out on the other side. It costs you guys nothing. Hopefully it's helpful, and I'm excited to talk to you guys soon. Peace.